The Kansas City Royals have shown up to the MLB free agency party with a flurry of starting pitching signings in the last couple of days, and we're going to break that all down for you next.
Hey, what's good, y'all? It's your boy JD6 here. I'm with my man. Shout out to KC Sports Authority. Make sure y'all go check that podcast out, man.
You heard the man.
And welcome into the KC Sports Authority podcast. I'm your host, Keegan Russell, joined by Christopher Tenpenny to talk some Royals baseball here with you guys. But first, do us a quick favor. If you're watching us over here on YouTube, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We would greatly appreciate it. On our way to 250, and we're getting really close. Just need a couple more of you to help us out. If you're listening to us on Spotify, you can also like and follow the podcast on Spotify. Give us a rating and a 5-star review. And then as far as social media, you can check us out on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and Twitter at KCSA Pod. Well, Chris, it is the second week of December. As of right now, it's December 13th, and the Royals are finally getting in on some free agency action. What's it feel like to finally see some transaction news come across our timelines for the Royals?
I mean, it's a good feeling to always be adding. I mean, I know we're going to get into the specifics here shortly, but there's a lot of teams that really haven't done that. Like, you look at the Red Sox, you look at, I know the Blue Jays have been rumored around. So there's some of these big market teams that haven't really brought any big players yet. And for the Royals to be one of the first teams behind, the Dodgers and maybe the Soto trade to bring in a guy, $45 million contract to Seth Lugo, along with some other minor moves, it's a good feeling, especially for a small market team that never's going to get the Sotos in a trade or the Ohtani's $700 million. So definitely exciting.
You're telling me the Royals couldn't come up with just $20 million a year for Ohtani, because that's apparently all he's worth for the next 10 years, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's a whole nother story. That's crazy, but it was nice to see the Royals have been rumored to a bunch of people. They're still rumored into a lot of the other starting pitching. I don't know how they're going to afford it, because didn't they tell us they only had about $30 million to spend?
Supposedly.
And they're up to $25.5 million with all the major league signings. I'm not even including, the contracts and the minor league stuff. But for major league signings, they're up to about $25.5 million. That's going to be owed in 2024. So we'll see. Maybe they will break their own payroll they've adjusted and go grab another starter.
Yeah. Well, and we said, I think the last time we were talking Royals, is we didn't think many things were going to happen until after that Juan Soto move, after the Ohtani signing. And to see the Royals being one of the first teams, I guess, to make a somewhat substantial signing with Seth Lugo that we'll get into here in a second, being one of the first teams active after that Ohtani deal and the Soto trade, gives me a little bit more optimism and excitement, because you just a typical Royals offseason, we're not really linked to guys that are towards that higher end of the free agency part. But so I'm excited about that. Maybe that's the difference between JJ and Dayton. I'm not sure. I think as we get into some of these moves, I still see a lot of Dayton's fingerprints on some of the moves. But let's get into it. First one, of course, First one, let's do real quick, and we'll come back to them later. And that was a couple days ago. The Royals brought back left-handed pitcher Will Smith. For Royals fans that don't really remember much about him, started out with the Royals, almost 10 years ago now, and transitioned to the bullpen. The Royals were kind of the first team to utilize him in that bullpen role. Left and he's pitched around the league. I think what's crazy about this, and it didn't dawn on me until I read the article on it, he's won the last 3 World Series in a row, with the Braves, the Astros, and now the Texas Rangers. But they brought Will Smith back, who had a pretty solid year last year with the Rangers, up and down throughout, but finished pretty strong. Ended up being their closing role for quite a bit of the season. But the Royals bring him back. JJ said, hey, he's a winner. He knows how to win. He knows how to finish games. We need somebody in the bullpen roster that can do that. What are your thoughts on bringing this former Royal back?
Anytime you get a proven reliever on some level, even if it's older and still doesn't have the closer stuff, you're winning because you can flip that guy. We saw what they did with the Roldis Chapman, and while I don't think Will Smith at the deadline is going to be quite in the demand of a Roldis Chapman, he's still going to be up there because, like you said, he's won the last 3 World Series. He's had impacts on all 3 of those teams at some point throughout their run. So I love 1-year deals, man. They are my favorite because even if you flip them to the Dodgers for like their 8th prospect or 12th prospect or whatever, like that's a win. And also you got him for 3 to 4 months of a professional pitcher in the bullpen that can teach some of the young guys that can be somewhat reliable. Like I absolutely love it. And he's a lefty, and he's been here. What's crazy is Salvi was here when he was here back in 2012. I mean, I think that's all that's left, but technically, he's been around the block in KC.
Yeah, he'll get a pitch to a familiar target behind the backstop as of now. There really hasn't been any other conversation on the Salvi front other than, JJ said, I think a week or two ago, they don't anticipate moving Salvi.
Mm-hmm.
It could be some showmanship just to kind of up the offers. You never know. But yeah, first former, well, probably not the only one we'll see this offseason, but one of the former Royals that are back on this team, and I'm sure there's a couple others. But let's get into the big one, of course, and big one from a Royals perspective at least. That is the signing of the righty Seth Lugo, another veteran starter who has bounced around from starting to bullpen. Was with the Padres this last year. He's pitched for the Mets. I'd say to me a little above average starting pitcher. He's had his struggles starting pitching, but with the Padres last year, they brought him in, moved him back to the starting role, and he actually pitched fairly well. He's probably, for most of the season, their second most consistent starting pitcher. But the Royals give out that 3-year, $45 million contract, and I think where we got to start with this is the fact that it is, 2023, and the Royals finally just gave out their 4th largest contract in franchise history, and it's only $45 million. Not even anywhere close to anything you could dream of about the Ohtani deal. But 3 years, $45 million, that now slots him behind, Alex Gordon, Salvador Perez, and Gil Mesh, of course. But tell me, what do we as Royals fans need to know about Seth Lugo, and what kind of impact can he have on this rotation?
Yeah, I mean, the man's been around the block too. He's just turned 34 years old, so you get him for his 34, 35, 36-year-old season. The thing that always stands out to me when you watch Seth Lugo pitch is the curveball, man. The curveball just kind of drops off the table. I do like that he has swingman abilities. Obviously, you're not paying a guy $15 million a year to do anything out of the bullpen, but it's kind of nice to have, that skill set if some certain things break, injuries, whatever may happen. He's come in to be the 2, the 3, kind of ideally the 3, because I think the Royals, with the way this roster's currently set up, is they want it to be Reagans and Singer, and Lugo being an older guy, having that veteran, he's probably going to get a little bit more run because he is older, because Singer's coming off a weird year, because Reagans has only pitched 2 months of good Major League Baseball. He's probably going to be treated a lot like the 1 early, but I think in the Royals' heads, they want him to be the 3 because they really want these two guys that they've had to work out. So a little bit of insurance, a little bit more depth. I mean, you get Singer to bounce back. You've got right now, and Lyles is still in the 5. I know a lot of people hate that. I know I'm a little higher on Lyles just because I know the Royals aren't winning the World Series in 2024. So having a guy like Lyles that can eat innings is still important to this team. So having Lyles at the bottom and then those 3 at the top, you're 1 pitcher away from having a real MLB rotation that looks like a lot of good teams. There's a lot of good teams that have a bad 5 and 4 interesting starters. So I like the move from that standpoint. Now, is he the pitcher I would have picked to go after? No, I'm a little upset about that part, but we can get that after we hear your thoughts on them.
Sure. Yeah. I like Lugo as far as the addition to this team. I think he was a guy that was definitely within our wheelhouse. As soon as we were rolling into offseason, as I was going through free agent starting pitchers, this is one I circled that wanted. It just made sense. It felt like a Royal signing. The Royals have been in on him for 2 years now. They've had interest, mostly because of that curveball you mentioned. He's got a high strikeout rate on that curveball. So the Royals were actually in contract negotiations with him last offseason. But of course, weren't on the same playing field at that time. So he goes to the Padres. And then the funny thing this offseason is the Royals actually according to reports, outbid the Padres for his services. The Padres supposedly sent him a 4-year offer similar to this, but the Royals had more guarantees as far as the total compensation value, even with the third year being a player option. So I think that's kind of cool that the Royals outbid another team, because you would never think that ever happened. Now, yeah, we could get into, is he the guy you outbid for versus some of the other guys on the market, and would you pay him $15 million a year? I think in the way the MLB works now, $15 million a year for a mid to higher end consistent starting pitcher, it's pretty standard, I think, across the league right now, anywhere from that 11 to 17 million. I know last year we were paying Greinke like 18 million to be kind of that role. I think I might be a couple million off on that. But Seth Lugo, a little bit younger, of course, than Greinke. I think he has an opportunity to come in here and work back up to what his capabilities have been. Last year he looked pretty solid for the Padres. He posted a 3.57 ERA with 140 strikeouts and 146 in third innings over 26 starts, which was basically a full-time starting pitching season for him. So I think he's going to come in, he's going to – I was looking back at other years, and I'm not saying these are the same players, but when I look at this signing, it kind of reminds me similar to the Irvin Santana signing back in the early 2010s, or the Jeremy Guthrie signing. You bring in a guy who's capable. You're not asking him to come in to be a 1 or a 2 necessarily. You're going to pay a little bit more for that veteran presence, but hope that over that 2 years of that contract, he provides that presence and stability that I think we saw a little bit of with Santana. At that time, Santana was a better pitcher, and Guthrie just became Mr. Consistent for the Royals. So I think that's kind of what this reminds me of, but I think a little bit higher upside, especially with the being the curveball thrower. So I like the move, but is he the guy you would have gone after if you only had if you could only give a guy $30 million over 2 years? Is he the guy you would have gone after?
No, he's not, because there's too much risk. The Royals are in a position to where if they only have a certain amount of budget, like, I'm trying to take as few risks as I can. And look, he's going to be 30. He just turned 34, and this is his first year starting like that. He's coming off a career year with the most inning pitched at his age. Like, I don't think that guy's getting any better. Now, maybe can he try to put it together for another year? Hopefully. I think that's what the Royals are paying him to do. But it just, Stroman's a little older than we all think. I think he's 33.
Yeah.
But he started his entire career. So that's a bonus. Like, I would have gone after him. Or Giolito and Jack Flaherty are both under 30 who have started their entire career. So, like, I would have tried to give like 20 million over 2 or 3 years to one of those 3 guys that are proven starters that are also a little younger, than take the risk on a 34-year-old swing man who finally had to put together a 1 year starting over 3 years. So it's a little risky, but it kind of gets into my main point that I think the Royals are trying to do. I don't really think this move, even though Lugo is under contract for 2025 and probably 2026, because it's a player option that I can't imagine a 36-year-old
would say no to.
Yeah, 15 million. So he's a 3-year guy. But the move isn't for 2025 or 2026. It's for 2024, because we all know about the stadium. We all know where the fans are on voting for that stadium. The Royals are trying to muster like 77 wins, put a interesting product on the field, and sway your vote. Like, that's what that move screams to me. They got the safe guy who they feel like can do it one more year. And once they get their vote for the stadium, who cares what he does in the next 2 years? That's kind of how I felt with the deal with some of those other bigger fish. Now, if they go out and still sign one of those other guys, then I'm 100% wrong. They are up in their budget. They're trying to improve, but it seemed like they kind of used their one move on the safest option for next year, not the best option for the next 3.
Yeah, and maybe if anything, depending on how the season goes, if Seth Lugo is pitching well, that's not a huge contract that you would have a difficulty time moving. Like, if there's another contending team out there, that needs to beef up their rotation, needs a 3, 4, 5 starter, a $15 million middle of the pack starter that's consistent isn't really a hard thing to move. It's kind of like he's I think he's better than what Ryan Yarbrough was last year.
Oh, yeah,
But
much.
Ryan Yarbrough, same kind of thing. You brought him in because you needed a guy who could fill some time and just go out there and take the mound every 5 days
Right.
and deliver something. So Lugo's in that ballpark. I think he has the potential to be stronger. I think pairing him with Singer and Reagans is a nice little combo of youth with some veteran presence there. But yeah, if this is the only like bigger starting pitcher free agency move, then yeah, it's gonna feel like they left a little bit on the table by not going out and getting Giolito or Stroman or any of those guys that are just a little bit further ahead. I think that's the one thing. It gave me optimism seeing a signing like this because it's not a typical Royal signing. Maybe they overpaid just a little bit to get him, but it gives me optimism that they're at least looking to find ways to improve versus just going out and getting the Ryan Yarbrough, who maybe would have cost $2 million this year versus $15 million, but you're going after a guy that gives you a little bit more. The one I guess downside to it, or has me a little worried, is I know it was his first year back as a starting pitcher, but he didn't even crack 150 innings. And we all know how difficult the Royals have been the last 2 years to win games when their starting pitcher can't go more than 4 1/3 innings or 5 innings. And that being under 150 off 26 starts, gives me a little bit of worry that he won't pitch very deep. But a lot of that could have been just managing the game last year and because the Padres had a decent bullpen, so maybe it's managing his innings there to kind of work him back in. Let's shift gears now and then we'll come back to starting pitching. But let's shift gears to the Royals. Now look like they're starting their second pipeline. They've got their pipeline with Atlanta, where they make deals every season. And of course, Dayton Moore was there. Now they've got the Rangers pipeline, of course, with not just signing Will Smith, but bringing in right-hand reliever Chris Stratton, another pretty decent bullpen arm. I actually like this move too. The Royals are going out and getting a few guys that they can add in who should have an immediate impact, should push the guys that are on the edge of the roster to find ways to make the roster, and then also a guy that you could flip later. Stratton, another guy, he's pitched for the Cardinals and he pitched for the Rangers this last year, of course, winning the World Series. Had a pretty decent season with them, 82 and 2/3 innings, 81 strikeouts, over 64 appearances, a 3.92 ERA, a below average whip rating as far as the rest of the MLB bullpen arms go. So I kind of like this move too. Another Ranger. So JJ's dipping into the let's take success from the team that just immediately won, which is funny because this is now you can see there's just a lot of Rangers footprints on this roster now, and even though maybe Dayton Moore wasn't the one making the decisions, it's just kind of funny to see the connection there between him and of course Chris Young, former Royal. But what can you tell us about Chris Stratton?
I can tell you that a lot of fan bases have always trusted him, even though he's never been like a 7, 8, 9 guy. It's like most like Cardinal fans, I got a buddy I had a buddy that's a Cardinal fan and a Ranger fan. I reached out immediately to kind of get like an overall feel, just because I didn't know, like, relievers are weird. You can look at their stats on Baseball Reference, but there's all a feel. People hated Scott Barlow there for first year or two, even though he had overall good numbers, because it felt like he was still blowing the big moments. He's Mr. Reliable. Like, he's a guy that, again, he's not going to be your closer. He's probably not going to be your 8th inning guy, but like when you see him come out of the bullpen, you just feel like he's a professional pitcher that's going to get the job done, whether he's puts out a fire because of what the inning is or whatever you need him to do. He's a guy that's just a good bullpen piece, a professional pitcher, which, again, this is what that team needs. Like, if you just watched the playoff run, the Rangers didn't use Will Smith or Stratton very much. They used Spores to Chapman to Leclerc, but this is the rest of the guys, kind of like the Royals. They used HGH. They didn't use Hochhaver as much. They didn't use some of those other guys they had. So they're in that depth part of the bullpen, which is great for the Royals because, again, you're always looking for bullpen depth if you're a contending team and we still don't think the Royals are really going to be a contending team. We think they're going to be a lot better, but they've got at least 2 bullpen arms now in the span of a week that you can flip for some prospects if the season doesn't quite go how you think it is. And so I love the move early.
Yeah, he seems like a bullpen arm that's just better than the typical, all right, let's go out and sign a 38-year-old reliever who's lost his velocity and just, we need him to come in and just take a spot. I like this one. I think he's got some higher upside. He's got a pretty decent strikeout rate. He lowered his walk rate last year, and I think that's the other thing that just really killed this bullpen is the fact that it seemed like it didn't matter who you brought out of the bullpen, especially Amir Garrett. Somebody was getting on base with a high walk rate, and the Royals lose so many games. You sit there and you're listening to Denny Matthews talk, and he's like, "What's the thing he says the most is, a leadoff walk, just kills the game." So if he comes in and can kind of do that, he was average the first half of the year with the Cardinals, and he was pretty decent the second half with the Rangers. But can he come in, be that, again, the consistent veteran guy that can come in and you put the fire out? I kind of think of him similar to Hochevar in the sense that Hochevar was one of the guys you turn to in the 4th, 5th, or 6th inning when, three guys get up to bat in a row, get on base, and you just need to get out of a quick jam. I think he's going to kind of play that role, be the guy that they kind of turn to first in that time. I don't think he's going to have a 7th, 8th, 9th inning late reliever guy, but I think he is going to come in and kind of be that fireman, so to speak. And again, another guy that you could flip later if need be. But that kind of leads me into what is it with the Royals and the Rangers and Braves? Like, this is the 4th guy this offseason or within the last 6 months to bring over from the Rangers/Braves. And I know it's going to happen again during the season. But is there anything, is it just the familiarity with, the front office, or what is it about the Royals wanting to go get Rangers and Braves guys?
I just think it's kind of just, I think especially with the Rangers, just kind of happened. Like, I don't know. Maybe it's something with Chris Young, but it's not like the Rangers are letting all of their good guys go away purposely. I think it's, and I don't think that, necessarily the Royals are getting their top end stuff. I just think that, it makes sense. The Rangers don't have a ton of money, so Will Smith and Chris Stratton, your 4th, 5th, or 6th options out of your bullpen aren't going to be guys that they're prioritizing to come back. So they're 2 easier guys to go out and get. The Cole Reagans thing, I think it was just the Rangers knew that they needed bullpen help. Remember, this is exactly. This is the team that we thought needed bullpen help. And so they traded for Chris Stratton from the Cardinals last year. They traded for Aroldis Chapman from the Royals last year. So, I think it's just, I don't think there's any correlation. I think it's just kind of how it's worked recently. I don't think it's going to be something we continue to see, but it is kind of nice to have a couple of World Series champs. And, Cole Reagans is going to get that World Series ring too for pitching, the 20 innings he did for the Rangers back in April or whatever. So,
yeah, that's why I like these moves. You bring in guys that have been on winning teams, and you need people on this team that have been around winning, because most of this roster has not seen winning days at all. And we saw how that played out with Whit Merrifield before he got traded. One of my favorite players, and I'm very frustrated that his career went the way it did here with the Royals from a winning standpoint. But you could just see when you're around constant losing, it just eats away at you until you have nothing left.
Everyone
so I think
brought in
is good.
Everyone, you're right. Everyone they brought in has been a winner at some level. Like, Hampson, the first one, he made the playoffs last year. That's that's something a lot of Royals players don't have. They traded for Nick Anderson, who's pitched in the World Series. Then now all these other moves they've gone out. Seth Lugo, who was on the Mets team that made the playoffs last year or 2 years ago. Excuse me. Like, he's probably the least. Him and Hampson are like the 2 of the least experienced guys, but everyone else is either won or pitched in World Series. So you kind of got to.
I think with Lugo, I might be wrong. I don't know if he was on the active roster for the 2015 World Series with the Mets, but he
16.
Was. Yeah,
he debuted in 16.
Okay.
That was one of the first things I looked at. I was like, was he like a depth guy on that? Because I don't remember him from the 15 team, but he made his debut in 16. So.
Yeah, he's been on winning teams. Like you said, Nick Anderson, even Kyle Wright, who of course we're not going to see this year. Just having that presence in the locker room. Now it's more than just Salvi.
Right.
It's more than just Aroldis Chapman. So I like that. So where does that lead us next? Now that's essentially 4 spots in your rotation that are probably locked up. There's a lot of direction to still come down the pathway here for the Royals as far as another starting pitcher. I don't think they're done. It doesn't sound like they're done. The question though is what else are they comfortable spinning? JJ, I think, said yesterday in their press conference, or when reporters were asking him after the Lugo signing, he said they have a budget. And if that budget is 30 million, like you said, they're what, 4 or 5 million away from that.
Right.
Well, $5 million isn't really going to get you anything as far as another free agent starting pitcher, maybe through a trade or something. But where does that lead us going next? The other question out there, Zach Greinke has said now that he wants to pitch again in 2024. So I would fully expect him to be back in a Royals uniform unless he just wants more than what the Royals think he's worth. So if Greinke came in and he was your fifth guy, that gives you Reagans, Brady Singer, Zach Greinke, Seth Lugo, and Jordan Lyles. That's, as far as the AL Central is concerned, that's not a bad rotation for the AL Central. I think that's a rotation that's certainly capable of performing well within this division. But I don't know if that really, does the signing of Lugo and bringing Greinke back, up your win total by 15 games. I don't really know if it quite does that. And we need at least a 15-game win jump to kind of get the fan base excited for the future. But what are some other potential moves, things you see coming down the pipeline that could be next for the Royals?
I think if I had to guess, I think they're going to try to sign a bat with that 5 million and make it more for like a guy that's going to be a little older, maybe not coming off the best year, but just a guy that, again, a veteran hitter that can hit fifth in the lineup, because that's really what they need. Because it's probably going to be, Michael, Bobby, Vinny, Salvi. Those are your front four, and then there's a lot of question marks behind that. So I think they're really going to want another bat that, even if he's not, a bopper, not in his prime anymore, someone that can be professional. I think that's what they're going to use the rest of their budget on, whether that's a Tommy Pham, whether that's a who knows what. And then I think they're going to trade for a starter. Now, I don't know exactly what they're going to do. Like I've been, if you're following me on Twitter, you know where I'm at. I'm on the Miami train. I want Braxton Garrett. I mean, I want Jesus Luzardo, for being honest.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think the Royals have the prospect resources to go get Jesus Luzardo. So realistically, Braxton Garrett, a younger lefty that's pitched really well the last couple of years, is a guy that is number one on my list as far as potential available starting pitchers in the trade market. It's just, I don't know what the Royals necessarily have to offer. Like, can they give up a Caden Wallets or a Ben Carduna? They have to give up one of their higher prospects, or will the Marlins take a flyer on MJ Melendez or a Drew Waters, Michael Massey? Like, it's going to take probably at least 2, if not 3 of those names I just said to go get somebody. So I'm kind of just curious on, if you can put Massey, Melendez, and then one of your pitching prospects, you're going to package for Garrett. You plug in Hampson at second. You have a legit rotation, and you just kind of roll with, you sign an outfielder. Like, you're kind of, you got Nelson Velasquez in left, you got whichever veteran you put in right, and center's still a mess, but Isbell's good enough defender that, like, I'm okay if you make all these other moves with Isbell being your 9-hole center fielder that plays really good defense at Kauffman Stadium. So that's kind of where I'm at. I think that's what I would do, is I would sign a Tommy Pham like player and trade for a Braxton Garrett like pitcher with some of the guys that you already know, because there's just too many young guys. You got to get rid of some of them.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Even, I know they brought in Velasquez, and I think he's got a spot on this team, but I think you do need that Jorge Soler type. It's probably not going to be him. I don't think he's the former Royal coming back. Maybe he's got too high of a strikeout rate, I think, for what JJ wants here. But
and Velasquez is sorry, I know it's your turn, but like, Velasquez is, I think, a great 6 or 7 hitter DH that can play left or right because of the power. Like, I don't want to spend money on Jorge Soler when I have a very similar, younger, cheaper, maybe not quite as good, but not drastically different. I don't think that can play DH and hit 7th and hit 25 homers.
Yeah. I think where I was going to go with that is if you're not confident that Velasquez is an everyday at bat, whether it's in the outfield or just DH, then having that veteran bat you still need, because you need someone that's going to push him. You need somebody that's going to, if Prado's still on this team, if Melendez is still on this team, you need a veteran proven bat that maybe isn't going to hit 35 home runs, but if he can hit 20 to 25, 50 to 70 RBIs and do kind of what Carlos Santana was brought in to do. I know the last chunk of that, he wasn't great here, but you need that veteran bat like that to push some of these younger guys, because I don't think you can just, if we roll out with the roster we pretty much have, it's one of the youngest on the field rosters, I think, in the league. And that's just a lot of trust to give to a group of players that haven't proven anything outside of, Bobby and Garcia and half a season of Vinny, which, we really haven't even seen a full season of that yet.
Right.
So it'd be curious to see how he looks coming back off of injury. But yeah, I think I agree with what you just said there. Go get a proven bat. Find a pitcher that we can trade for, or I mean, the offseason market's been relatively slow still, even with some of the bigger signings. Maybe that dictates that there's not a lot of teams looking to spend a ton of money this year yet. Obviously that could all change in the course of the day or two and see a spiral effect of signings. But maybe there's a couple of these guys, maybe a Jack Flaherty is still sitting out there in a week or two and takes a little less money, or maybe the Royals can take a page out of the Dodgers playbook and figure out how to give you a deal, and we'll figure out how to get you the money later when Sherman thinks we'll have a lot more money coming in because of the stadium. We can just defer you right now. Flaherty's not the guy that you're going to sign a 8-year contract to and defer it all to the end, but maybe they can get creative since there are no rules when it comes to MLB free agency. And maybe that'll be another episode we dive into, is comparing salary caps of the NBA, NFL to what Major League Baseball does, and get into the nitty gritty of that conversation if anybody chooses to listen to it. But yeah, the Royals, they're not going to go out and make anything big splash. That's kind of where I was going to go next in some of my research, is who are some other realistic trade targets for starting pitching that we could still go get. But as it stands now, I think these moves are pretty solid. It gives me a little bit better than I think what they added last offseason as far as pitching. Yeah. I still think they're probably going to go. I know we didn't really cover it in this, but they signed Tyler Duffy to a minor league contract. He's pitched in the division with the Twins, another bullpen piece. They went and took Matt Sauer from the Yankees in the Rule 5 draft, and now he's the Royals number 22 prospect, which there's question mark there, because if the Royals farm system is terrible, then 22 is not good. But he is capable, at least. He's got some talent there. And who is he? I'm forgetting the other guy that we talked about off air.
Brasso.
Yep.
Yeah, he's
so they're bringing these guys
in a World Series, hit a big go-ahead homer off of Aroldis Chapman back in 2020. So just a minor league deal, and not a guy that I'm going to rely on, but another winner depth piece.
And that's what I like, and that's where we'll wrap up here. Is I like seeing JJ going and finding guys that have been in winning cultures and winning environments, because again, this roster does not have anybody on this team outside of really Salvi that has truly experienced a winning culture, not just in Kansas City, but around the league. So I like the moves. There's still quite a few pieces out there that can be added. As far as former Royals, I still wouldn't mind the addition of Danny Duffy back in this lineup. I don't know if you need him really necessarily now, because you've got a decent amount of lefties actually on the team. But why not bring in another former fan favorite to get the fan base excited again? But yeah, there's still a lot of moves to be had. Of course, we'll jump into them more, but I think that'll wrap up this conversation on the Royals. As stuff comes out, of course, you will jump in and break it down. Chris, this is some of your favorite time of year with all the overlap in sports, and I know you mentioned already how much you're tweeting about baseball, but how can our fans stay up to date with all of your thoughts on baseball?
Yeah, as always, go follow me on Twitter at tenpenny88. Again, always spouting off something. Sometimes it's a little nonsense. Sometimes it comes off a little, but it's just Twitter, man. I just put out what I think, and we'll go from there. So I always love to have the dialogue. Please reach out, and I am always down to talk baseball 365. There's not enough of us out there, so if you're one of those, please come join me.
Yeah, especially as a Royals fan, I think it's hard to sit here and talk baseball in the wintertime when you're not around a winning team. But we don't have to just talk Royals. There's plenty of other fun stuff in baseball to get into.
I know we're wrapping up. I was at a Christmas party yesterday, and all anyone wanted to talk to me about was, oh, tough Sunday for the Chiefs, because I'm down OKC, so they're not all Chiefs fans, and it's like, I just want to talk about Ohtani's contract. I want to talk about Seth Lugo, and no one wanted to talk to me about that. So that's all I really wanted to get into.
Not to get into the Chiefs because we have episodes dedicated to that, which of course you can find Chris and CJ on that with the Aftermath podcast. We of course had our recap of the Chiefs' disappointing loss to the Bills, but with the help of the Dolphins losing Monday night, the tough schedule the Baltimore Ravens still have down the stretch, the 1 seed's not completely out of grasp yet if the Chiefs can figure out how to win games and not lose them. So plenty of Chiefs stuff coming. Got a lot of KU basketball, KU football stuff coming up. So if you haven't done so yet, hit subscribe right here on YouTube if you're watching so you can stay up to date to all of our future episodes. If you're listening on Spotify, we kindly ask that you hit follow as well as rate and leave us a review for the podcast. And of course, if you want to stay up to date on some of the other content and things we're doing, hit us up on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter at KCSA Pod. This is the time of year where I'm starting to produce a little bit more content. This is my slow season as far as work goes, so I have more time to put stuff together and trying to get a lot of this stuff out here as we come into the winter stretch of sports season. So thanks, guys, for tuning into this one. We will catch you guys in the next episode.